All right, Attorney Steve, we're back on the road today with a special edition of Intentional Torts Overview. All right, so we are heading out and we are on the road, but you know, Attorney Steve never stops working, always trying to bring you the latest and the greatest and trying to use this technology to help you all learn something. So, and myself learn something. I learned during the process as well. So, I will have a chat bar coming up here, hopefully. And so when that comes up, you'll feel free to leave your comments with me, and I'll see if I can give some general information on intentional torts and defenses, okay? So I have some notes here. So let's talk about it. So give me 1 second here, actually. So let me see here. I don't see it coming up live. Let me see if it's in here. Give me 1 second. I appreciate your patience. Okay, it says we're offline. So give me a second here. I want to make sure we're online for you. Intentional Torts Overview. Okay, stream status good. Check the box. And let's see where we're at here. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Okay. All right, we're there. Diane's in the house. Thanks, Diane. I appreciate it. I'm kind of seeing if I had a chat bar going here. So, okay. So we are talking intentional torts. All right. So we are headed out in the, just the best I can tell you is I'm in the middle of the desert here. And so we're just cruising down the highway, as best I can tell you. So we're talking about torts today. So torts is basically, all right, I hope we're back here. So you don't always get the greatest reception. This is technology for you people. So, all right, so let's talk about these torts, okay? This is the stuff you're gonna see on the bar exam. If you're a law student, I know I've got a lot of law students on my feed, but let's start with battery. What's battery? No, yes, it is something that you have in your car to get you from A to B, but that's not what we're talking. Oh, this circle keeps going around and around. Is it getting any better, Diane? I think I buffered for a second, so hopefully it's a little bit better. I'll wait to hear from you. So battery is the first one, and battery really is at a very simple level. I walk up to you and I punch you, and you go, "Ow, that's a battery." It's an intentional tort, meaning you intended to do it. It's an intentional, harmful, or offensive bodily contact with another. And so that's just your general rule. If you're on the bar exam, there's inevitably going to be a battery. Somebody is going to punch someone. Somebody may pull the chair out and you fall. That may be argued to be a battery. You may see somebody spitting on someone, saying, "I hate you," and spitting on you. That may be a battery. These are the points when you're going to come up and you're going to talk about the tort of battery. And all you're really going to say, it's an intentional, harmful, or offensive bodily contact without consent or justification, okay? So that's kind of your basic rule. You talk about whether it was harmful or whether it was offensive, whether it was a contact. You move in, you get your point, you move out, okay? Now, that is battery. Now, each of these torts have potential defenses. And in tort law, you're always going to have potential defenses. And in the situation where it's punching or kicking or whatever, it may be self-defense. It may be defense of others. It may be defense of property. Get your hands off of that, you know. And so you always want to be looking, if you find something on the exam where there's some sort of contact, you want to then analyze, is it justified? Did they consent to the touching? Did they say, "Go ahead and bump into me, it's okay"? Did they say, you know, Houdini used to let people punch him in the stomach? So that would be consent. He consented to the touching. In fact, some say that was the punch that killed him. But you want to look at that, cite the rule, discuss the facts of the case, get in, get out. If there's any defenses, talk about that, and then talk about damages. They're going to want all the foreseeable damages that resulted. So anyway, so that is your battery, okay? And the next one is assault. Assault is another intentional tort. Well, what's assault? Some people say
that's insulting.
Some people say it's what you put on your French fries, but that's not assault. Assault is basically a battery that was never completed. It was putting someone in imminent apprehension of a harmful or offensive bodily contact. Imminent apprehension. So if I walk up to somebody and I get right in their face and I say, I'm going to just tear you to shreds, that may be close enough to put me in imminent apprehension of a harmful or offensive bodily contact. If you're doing that, you are assaulting me. And battery and assault can also be charged, if it's serious, it can also be charged as a crime. I think most people know about that. There's assault and battery. But it's also a civil action. So you can sue somebody in civil case while they're being pursued in a criminal court. So those are the kinds of things that can happen. With assault and battery, they usually say it's like ham and eggs. They go together. So again, you might have some potential defenses, self-defense, but assault's a tough one, and usually the phrase in assault, as I recall from law school, was it's got to be more than just an insult or fighting words or conditional threats. If I could get up out of this wheelchair, I'd whoop your behind. That's not enough to create that imminent apprehension. But it's a question of fact, and on your law exams, you're going to take a close look, and you're going to see if you can argue that. As a plaintiff lawyer, you're going to argue that, and as a defense lawyer, you're always thinking about defenses. So on a bar exam, they're looking to see, can you look at both sides of the world? Can you look at it from a plaintiff perspective? Can you look at it from a defendant perspective? So there's your first two torts. That was easy. Assault and battery. Number 3 on the intentional tort list is false imprisonment. Now you may say to yourself, what? Does that mean somebody throwing you in jail without justification? Yeah, it could be. Absolutely. That's what they're talking about. As I remember, my law school definition was the intentional infliction of confinement to a bounded area without legal justification, to a confined area, to an ascertainable area without legal justification. Okay, so that is false imprisonment. Again, it's an intentional tort. Somebody's intending to put you into this space. So you may see that on a bar exam where you go into a car dealership and they throw your keys up on the top and you say, well, I want to leave. And they say, well, sorry, not until you buy this new car. And you say, well, give me my keys, I'm leaving. I don't think so. Can't find your keys. So things like that. So that's where you have an intentional infliction of confinement, a defined area with no reasonable means of escape. Now, if you can just walk across the street and grab a bus, the other side's going to argue that. Why didn't you just call your friend and get out of there? But nevertheless, that's the tort, intentional infliction of confinement. Another way that this pops up on the bar exam is what I call, is one of my favorite, shopkeeper's privilege. Shopkeeper's privilege. What's that? So that's where basically when you go into a store, they're usually watching you, and if somebody sees you and they think you're stealing something, they have and every state's different. Check your state laws. I'm not, this is all general legal information only and not legal advice, but there's a thing where they can say, hey, you, come here. Let me look inside your coat. And you say, well, I don't feel free to leave. Are you falsely imprisoning me? Yes, I am, and I have a shopkeeper's privilege. And that's why I say, look up the law in your state before you use this if you're a retailer. But yes, you have a justification, and oftentimes that would be either a statutory or common law justification to reasonably detain someone for an amount of time that's reasonable to conduct a reasonable search. When you're on the bar exam, you're going to be using the word reasonable about 50 times. You're going to be explaining what's reasonable and what's not reasonable when you think they've crossed the line. But that's just a general idea of the false imprisonment tort. And what you'll also have usually on the bar exam is if you have that and they're moving you or from one spot to another, don't forget to discuss criminal law. Kidnapping, if you got that, your mind is in the right spot. Kidnapping can also come up just the same in something like that, okay? So that's your false imprisonment. Again, I'm not sure the defense is shopkeeper's privilege, consent, it's hard to say. I guess there could be a self-defense, somebody's on the loose and you detain someone to protect them. I don't know, so look at the facts. As we say, massage the facts. On the exam, you're going to look very closely at each and every fact. Why are they choosing that word? Why are they in this setting? Is there a reasonable means of escape? Would a reasonable person feel that they're not free to leave and that they're actually being confined? Okay, so these are some of my tips here for you bar takers. That's number 3 in our intentional torts. So we have battery, assault, false imprisonment. Another one is the intentional infliction of emotional distress. If you're in law school, you've heard this one over and over. I did a video on this on my YouTube channel. You can Google Attorney Steve IIED, and I think I'm at like 40,000 hits on the video already. But everybody loves this one because everybody feels like they're subjected to this. Oh my God, intentional infliction of emotional distress. He or she's trying to distress me out. But yeah, I always have to say, go over the elements, because there's one element that usually kills your tort in this area. Not always, but usually. But it's the intentional or reckless infliction of severe mental or emotional distress by extreme and outrageous conduct. Okay, did you catch that? Those are your elements. Depending on your law class, there may be some more elements, but the intentional or reckless, it can be reckless, which is basically a disregard for the rights of the other, or disregard that you're going to cause serious harm or injury. So intentional or reckless infliction of severe mental or emotional distress, not, he threw a baseball bat at me and, it really made me mad. I was at the family picnic and I really got mad. That's not going to be enough, okay, in general. Again, this is not legal advice. In general, you want something like hospital bills, psychiatric bills. You had to go seek treatment. You couldn't get out of bed. You couldn't work. Lots of things. So you got to have that serious mental, emotional distress, and you have to have that extreme and outrageous, look at the quotes, extreme and outrageous conduct that you have to have. And, this is going to be a question up by the judge. The judge is going to make this decision, in at least in my jurisdiction of California and Arizona. The judges are going to ask themselves, is this extreme and outrageous, or is it just kind of wow? And I've heard so many different examples, but I'm trying to think of maybe some of the good ones, going up and taking there was one case, I think, with a trash can where they threw the trash can on some old lady's head in front of a bunch of people. That was extreme and outrageous, okay? So again, look at the facts on your exam. Is something crazy happening? But also make sure that you talk about this, because this is where you get your bonus points when you issue spot, okay? And you're saying, is that extreme and outrageous? Is it enough? Is it enough to recover? Can you convince a judge, or if it happens to be a jury, can you convince them that this is, as they say, beyond the bounds of decency, which a civilized society should be expected to tolerate? These are some of the buzzwords that are in my head from years and years ago, and they still stick in my head today. That's what we're looking for as lawyers and as law students. Okay, so you have 4. Those are 4 of the intentional torts. We have fraud, intentional fraud. What is fraud? Basically lying, false statements of fact, false pretenses, essentially false statements of fact made to induce another person's reliance and in a manner which causes them damages, financial, emotional, pecuniary, non-pecuniary, special and general damages. So you have false statements, the intent, what we call the scienter. I love that word, scienter. Throw that on your bar exam. You're looking like you've been around the block, wanting to scoop up those valuable points. Scienter. Phone's ringing off the hook today. So, Attorney Steve never sleeps, I tell you. I never sleep, which is okay sometimes. But anyway, so your fraud is your intentional lies and are made to induce someone and does induce. Now, fraud is good because if you can prove with clear and convincing evidence that they had this scienter to defraud you, you can seek what type of damages? Drum roll, let's go. Punitive damages, baby. Punitive damages are damages designed to punish and deter and to prevent that type of activity from happening again, to scold a defendant and say, don't you dare do that again. So fraud is one of those torts where you can seek punitive damages. Now, bear you to think that punitive damages applies only to these torts. It could apply to any of these. In California, we have California Civil Code Section 3294, and that's a section that says if you can prove fraud, oppression, or malice, fraud, oppression, or malice, then you can seek punitive damages. So if you can show that in any of these torts, you're going to be asking for punitive damages. Catch that on your bar exam, more points, okay? You're like Pac-Man, you're just gobbling up the points as you see them on the exam, okay? So that's fraud. That's, what do I have next? Defamation. Defamation, okay. So everybody knows what defamation is. False statements of fact that disparage my character. I'm cutting this down. This is not the full definition I would give on a bar exam, but it's a false statement of and concerning a plaintiff, which tends to injure one in their reputation, their profession, their business. There's certain classes that are per se, what we call, we get it. It's defamation per se, libel per se. Calling somebody a whore or disparaging one's business. Those can be per se categories. And we see that nowadays. We see a lot of Yelp litigation, complaints board, people that are putting out all sorts of complaints. So those things are out there. So other things, what do we have here? And I'm just going to take let's see. Well, hang on. I have to read that. So you're going to have to hang on, Diane. There's a lot of stuff there. So defamation, and remember, if it's a media, if it's a public figure like Donald Trump or Oprah Winfrey or some public figure, there's a higher degree of recklessness that needs to be shown because we want to have the freedom to talk about public figures. And so there's a higher standard, the New York Times versus Sullivan standard, where you have to show actual malice against somebody if you're a media celebrity, one of those things. So that's, I don't want to get too much into it. There's a lot of nuances in defamation law, but just know you may be saying, oh yeah, that attorney Steve, he's just incompetent, worst lawyer I've ever seen in my life. And so you may want to say, well, wait a second, I'm issue spotting, was that defamation? Well, it was talking about Attorney Steve, but it seemed more like an opinion. Remember, opinions are protected by the First Amendment. So you want to make sure you point that out and you talk about it and you say, likely the defamation claim would not succeed. So like I said, you may see it on your exam. You may say, it was publicated to a third party. They understood it to be Attorney Steve. Attorney Steve, that's the guy they were talking about. However, it sounds like an opinion. Or everybody knows the number one defense to defamation. Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? Frontline Lisi, would you like to try?
What's the question?
The number one defense to defamation.
Insanity.
She says insanity. And that's why we call her Frontline Lisa, handling the phone calls and the great, excellent client service that she provides. But no, truth is the defense. You say, well, somebody said, first is the world. And you say, well, that's defamation. You posted that on Yelp. I'm going to sue you. And you say, okay, truth is the defense. Wait till I tell the jury that this is actually the truth. I have pictures of how bad you botched the job. So truth is a great defense to defamation. So, and on our chat board, let's keep it clean. We're all friends here. We're all lucky to be living, breathing. So let's keep it friendly with each other. So that is another intentional tort, defamation. Now, defamation, one of two forms, or slander. So if you see somebody talking defamatory lens, slander. If you see somebody putting it in writing, like on the internet, that is libel. And people ask me, how do you remember those? I always get them confused. I say, well, slander is just talking. You slandered me. Libel is like a label. So whenever I think libel, label, like a label is something you put on an envelope, right? A label. So libel is written, label. It's just like a label. Attorney Steve Tips here. All right. So that's your defamation. There is the tort of invasion of privacy. Now, this is an interesting one because privacy is an interesting concept. It's not really in the Constitution. And in fact, it was something that was sort of implied in the Constitution, looking at other amendments and other sections of the Constitution and case law. Okay, like Roe versus Wade, that was kind of a woman's privacy case. And so the court came to find that there's a penumbra. If you get that on your exam, I know you're gobbling up points. It's implied in the penumbra of rights. And there's a set of privacy torts, and I love these little privacy torts. I don't do a lot of them, but they do pop up from time to time. What are they? One is false light. Now, false light is similar to defamation, but it can be true. So a false light is actually true, or a half-truth, or a misleading truth. It's something that's done or said that puts somebody in a false light in the public eye. Okay? Now, there's also, again, celebrity exceptions, things for celebrities, there's going to be higher standards of proof, things like that. But false light is essentially saying something that puts somebody in a false light, and it could be something like, this major league pitcher, drinks Coors Light beer and they love it. Well, maybe they drink Coors Light beer, but not really all that often, and they don't really love it. Maybe they were just seen drinking a Coors Light beer. So it's putting somebody in a false light, not necessarily in a way that would be true. And again, it's an intentional tort. So it's one of our 4 privacy torts. So remember that. We call that false light. And then you have intrusion on seclusion and solitude. I love this one too. So this is the one where you're in your backyard and somebody comes in with their drone right down into your pool, and they're looking around and watching you take an outdoor shower or whatever's going on, and they say, well, you're in the public eye, sorry, I can do whatever I want. And you say, wait a second here, some buzzwords for your bar exam. I have a reasonable expectation of privacy. You're infringing, you're coming down below into my airspace, and you're intentionally intruding on my seclusion and solitude. So that's when you want to catch if you see some weird facts like that on a bar exam. And causes damages, so you're humiliated, or maybe you were bathing topless in your own backyard and you were posting it on the internet saying, haha, I caught this in public, and I'm allowed to do this. So that's when you want to be thinking the privacy torts. Okay, that one's intrusion on seclusion and solitude. And I forgot what else I was going to say about that. But at any rate, that's a good tort to look at. That's one of your privacy torts. Say is, if something like that happens, what's, for my geniuses out here, what's another tort that you're going to be thinking of down like that? Think property law, think real property. Now we're talking about our real property bubble to the airspace, potentially a trespass. Okay, potentially a trespass. So you flag both issues, you talk about them both, boom, you're earning maximum points. Okay, so that is intrusion on seclusion and solitude. Public disclosure of private facts is the third of the 4 privacy torts. What is that? Public disclosure of private facts. Okay, so that's something like, now this is usually something that's true, by the way, because it's a fact. So say I have financial records, and most people like to keep financial records private, or their health records private, and somebody says, you know what, I don't like this person, or they're always bragging about how much money they make, whatever. I'm going to go post on the internet what they really make. I'm going to get their tax returns and bank statements, and I'm going to post it on the internet. Why? Because I just feel like it. Intentional posting, disclosing private facts. What's a private fact? It's what a reasonable person would consider to be private. You're going to argue that all day long on the exam. So it's a public disclosure to a reasonable person. What's a reasonable person? Well, it depends on the facts. Argue the facts. Okay, so there is your disclosure of private facts. With the internet, this is getting bigger because people have that ability to disclose things. We see it in divorce cases where one spouse is getting mad at the other, wanting to post things about them. So there's no need for it. There's no legitimate need to be looking at this tort. Okay, it's one of the 3 privacy torts. And the final privacy tort, this is something that we do, I would say, a good amount of cases. Misappropriation of identity, aka right of publicity. So right of publicity is something everyone has. You have it, I have it, everybody, at least in California. Again, this is what we're talking about here is general information, state law in California where I practice. I'm licensed in California and Arizona. So in these states, generally speaking, in California in particular, you're going to have a right of publicity statute. Civil Code Section 3344. Like I said, we do cases in this area. Now, this is where somebody is using your name, your likeness, your identity, your photo for commercial purposes without your consent, without paying you, and possibly even in a way that creates a false endorsement, as if you're endorsing somebody's product. Okay, so prime example would be you're 18 years old, somebody goes out to a sporting event and you're a volleyball player and you do this, boom, you do this great smash of the volleyball, someone snaps your photo, great, you're out in public, right? But then they take that and they put it on a cereal box and they say, be the best you can be, eat Stompy cereal or whatever. So then you go to the store one day and you go, that is my face on the box. That could be seen as a misappropriation of your commercial likeness, your photo, your name. They might even have your name on there, who knows. But those are cases where you can go and seek attorney fees in California under California law. And in California, we have both common law and a statutory. I'm not going to go into it. If you want to learn more about right of publicity, which is very fascinating, I have plenty of videos out there on that topic. Google attorney Steve right at publicity, but that's another one. So those are your 4 privacy torts. Did you get all those down? False light, intrusion on seclusion and solitude, posting of private facts, and misappropriation of name, image, and likeness. So can you see how these are invading your privacy? They're intentional acts. These are things you're looking for in your bar exam. They're going to help you a lot, okay? So that's your privacy. We have your trespass. You have trespass to land. That's what we talked about. And I'm not going to go in depth on that. Trespass is its own area. You have people that are invited onto your property, but then you kick them off and they stay anyway. You have people like the city government, that's kind of your municipalities, that need to come by and get in your backyard and check an oil or check the meter or whatever. So you have certain, and this crosses over into easements. And if anybody ever wants to hear about all that, maybe I'll do it someday. But those are your trespass to land, and then your trespass to chattel is a chattel is just personal property. So somebody, takes your car. Trespass, take my car in my chattel. Okay, so trespass to land, trespass to chattel, and then finally conversion. And conversion is basically, an example is I go to a restaurant and I say, "Here's a jacket, kindly hang that up, fine sir." And he says, "Yes, I will." He hangs it up. I come back, I say, "I need my jacket back." And they say, "I like that jacket, you ain't gonna get it. You're gonna have to pry that off my dead, cold hands." And I say, "Well, you know what I'll do instead? I'll sue you and the restaurant for conversion of my jacket. How about that?" "Okay, sir, here's your jacket back." Anyway, that's how that works. So conversion is taking something that's in your possession and converting it to your personal use. Now I'm going to give you the criminal law sidekick to that, which would be embezzlement. Embezzlement is where you lawfully have money in your possession like an accountant, and then you wrongfully convert that to your own use. So there is, so that's a good one. When you're on the bar, look for the conversion, look for the embezzlement, look for the false imprisonment, look for the kidnapping, okay? Look for the assault and battery, discuss how it could be charged both ways. And, and then the final piece that I want to tell you about is the transferred intent. I think bar examiners just fall in love with this. I think it's their favorite thing in the world. But as they say, your intent follows the bullet. So if I I'm going by this truck, if I intend to hit this guy with a rock, but it hits that truck, I can't say, "Well, I didn't intend to hit that truck, I intended to hit that truck." They say, "Well, did you take Attorney Steve's bar review online? That's called transfer intent." Duh. Transferred intent, So, but you always want to look for that, because I'm almost positive you're going to get that. They love to see if if the transferred intent transfers or not. And there's only one tort, I think, one or two that don't transfer, and I think it's conversion, and I think it's intentional infliction of emotional distress. But recall, also think about on the intentional infliction of emotional distress, there's also a negligent infliction of emotional distress, which is not where you intended it, but maybe where you breached a standard of care, you breached a duty, you were reckless, you weren't thinking about it. But reckless can get you right there at the tort. Remember, I said it could be reckless. So there are circumstances where you want to be talking about both of these. So you can see what the bar examiners are doing. They're trying to see, can you issue spot? Can you analyze? Can you tell whether it could be civil or criminal? Can you discuss the reasonable man or the reasonable person, now to be politically correct, the reasonable person standard? And can you discuss defenses like self-defense, consent, defense of others, necessity, shopkeeper privilege? Can you spot those and discuss them? And can you talk about the potential types of damages? Maybe punitive damages are warranted here. So that's about what I have here for my intentional torts. Do I have anything else? I'm just looking here. I think that's what I'm going to go with. There's some nuisance, private and public nuisance, but I'm not going to go into that. Nuisance, that can be a tough one to win on. So that's it. You just got 1 year of law school shrunk down into 36 minutes. So you're not going to have everything, but that's like a good nuts and bolts of intentional torts. Now you also have a lot of stuff on negligence. That's a whole nother topic. That's essentially breaching duties of care owed to others, causing them damages. You know, like a surgeon accidentally cutting off somebody's arm in a surgery, that's a mistake. They're not intending to do it. So that's your negligence torts. And then you also have a really interesting area of law dealing with products called strict product liability, which does anybody know what strict products mean? You want to write this on your exam. Liability without fault. They're like, wait a second, I can be liable for something even if I'm not at fault? What does this world come to, Attorney Steve? But yes, you can be liable without fault. Products liability, strict products liability. So that's usually torts, and I think you have some other things in it, but that's a really good short nutshell of what intentional tort law is. So I wanted to give you all that flavor today as I'm driving the beautiful desert here.
Just answer any questions?
Just enjoying this beautiful day. So you guys have some questions? I don't know. Thank you for listening. I think there's something about can I be evicted for a noisy muffler? So again, I have to say, unfortunately, our ethics rules prevent us from giving specific legal advice. But whenever you're a tenant, okay, when you're a tenant, number one, you have to get along with your neighbors. That's just rule number one. If you can't get along with your neighbors, you need to go get yourself like a 2 to 5 acre lot somewhere out here where you can just have a good time, and nobody's really going to tell you what to do out here. But when you get around with a lot of neighbors, you have to follow your lease. You have to look at what your lease says. Your lease may prohibit certain things. And it's usually, it's funny, so much in life and in law, when people call our office, they'll say, Attorney Steve, what are my rights, this or that or the other? And one of my first questions is always, did you sign a contract? Is there a contract at play? Was there anything? Well, yeah, I have a lease. Okay, have you looked at the lease? No, I haven't. That lease is a contract. When you sign something like that, it has terms and conditions and clauses. And I don't know, it may talk about different grounds for eviction. But also, if you don't know about eviction, for example, if I lived in Pennsylvania and I wanted to know what are my rights as a tenant in Pennsylvania, I'd go look up, Pennsylvania landlord-tenant lawyer, and I'd look up what kind of state laws do I have. California, for example, has some great landlord-tenant laws. It's pro-tenant. Some areas of California are even better than just the standard state rules, like San Francisco has some, really strong laws that favor tenants. So it may depend where you live. So you always want to look at your contract, find out what the rules are in your state, see what the contract allows you to do. Yeah, but realize there's also a concept, and I said I was going to touch on it, but I was going to skip on it actually, but there's a thing in the law called nuisance. And one of them, for example, the one I remember from law school was there was a big factory nearby a housing subdivision, and the factory was blowing all this smoke onto the subdivision. So that was kind of a nuisance, and one of the neighbors sued and said, I can't even really live here because, there's this smoke and debris. They were having debris fall on their lawns and things like that. So that was a nuisance. So you always got to be aware of the nuisance claims that are out there. Again, just generally speaking. But those are the things I'd be looking at. And I hope that just provides some general information for you. And with that, you know what? I actually got to get back to work. Got a lot of work to do today. I have some phone ringing. I got to get back to business, but I wanted to spend a little time. I was on the road trying out my new dash cam. So if you like the dash cam, give me a thumbs up. Say it was pretty cool. If you don't like it and just not working for you, just say not my cup of tea. You know, I'm trying to bring more information out there because I know a lot of people are really enjoying the videos. So I wanted to make sure I'm catering to anyone, okay? So this was general legal information only and not legal advice. Attorney Steve Vondran here. You can find me on the internet at
AttorneySteve.com.
AttorneySteve.com, the first name in legal services. All right, that's a wrap. If you like this video, feel free to share it on your social media networks. I'm out of here. Have a great day.